All right, we are live between two bags here in American Top Team Orlando.
Yeah, so today we're not laying on our elbows, hands propped up on our
looking at each other lovingly in the deep pools of our eyes.
I have a quick question. So, you had mentioned how Nick Benicasa approached you rather at EDC.
Yeah.
And was randomly speaking about the podcast.
He was giving us props. He's like, "Man, I love the fact that you guys are just like I love the format." I believe he said, "I like the format."
That's coming from he's like isn't he some sort of entertainer?
Well, he's a software engineer at Lockheed Martin.
Okay, he's got some side.
I know that he's helped promote events in the past. I don't know what degree he does that.
But he invited me to like something on his Facebook page.
Yeah, he's a musician too.
He is? Okay, all right. Well, that explains that.
But what's funny is to what degree, like I was kind of, it took me a second to realize he was talking about the podcast because you're at a music festival and EDM music is like blaring. And
that's how much he cares about it.
I was like, well, we've made an impact. So shout out to Nick. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and another shout out to Nick. So who the hell sold you like a quadruple extra large t-shirt? Because you posted a photo or he posted a photo of him at EDC and like he's repping the Tribe shirt, which is awesome. But he looks like a kid wearing like his dad's clothing, like playing dress up.
I didn't see this.
It's hilarious because it looks like he's wearing a shirt that like Jason Hayes should be wearing. So it's it's really funny. But anyways, so how are you, man? You've recovered. You did.
I'm
all
doing
3
great.
days?
I was So EDC, for those of you that aren't familiar, is a music festival, an electronic music festival.
Is it like Strong Bad doing his techno music the entire time?
I mean, I'm not into the current scene to really know like all the different guys, but Diplo closed it out. They go 1 p.m. to midnight every day, and
1 p.m. to midnight. So that's 11 hours.
11 hours, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. People wear a lot of exotic outfits, and
exotic is a very big understatement.
Yeah, I'll let people do searches online for rave girls.
It's an
wild
awesome
and stuff.
Hashtag on Instagram to follow.
But yeah, I've been the rave mom for the past 2 years, and
are you like making sure everybody's like staying hydrated?
Absolutely, staying hydrated. I've got like extra earbuds or ear.
I was going to say, like, I can tell you, I work about a 5 to 10 minute drive from the stadium.
Oh, and you heard it.
I heard it from the fuck. I stepped out of my car, right? Because I'm like, somebody had said to me, like, hey, make sure you leave early from work today because you got to avoid all this fucking traffic. I'm like, I'll leave 15 minutes early. I'll be good, right?
So traffic around Camping World was horrendous.
Dude, and that's exactly where I get onto the fucking 408. I mean, it's good scenery. Don't get me wrong. But
I know, but they started to close off streets. It was nuts.
Oh my God, man. Like it when I left that early, it should have taken me about 25 minutes, 30 at most to get home. It was an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah. It was
goddamn.
So last year it was a 2-day event, and I heard that there were over 100,000 people attending. Not
like in total, like total tickets sold, not at any given time.
So that's what I wasn't sure. I was under the impression last year that it was 100,000 concurrent on site. But what I can tell you is somebody in our party, Alexia, quoted 225,000 people over the 3-day weekend. So I don't know how you split that up.
That's a magnitude of.
But that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people, regardless if it's one day or across the.
Especially for just that dinky little area, right?
I mean, it was bigger than it was last year, but it was an insane amount of people, and it only got bigger each and every day. Like Friday was the quietest for sure.
So there must be bouncers everywhere.
No, actually, no.
Really?
No. It's surprisingly
with that much, just pure ass cheek. Everywhere?
No.
Is it not like just out of control? Just
no, and that's
creepers.
That's the misconception about this, and the big emphasis. So some of the people in our gym, are into EDM music and electronic music, and I had a phase where I was really into house music when I lived in Spain. So I lived in Spain for 2 years.
So Euro of you.
Yeah, so I was kind of into that back at that time period. So I kind of rediscovered that now, and I had a lot of fun. And one of the big things with the rave scene is this idea of PLUR. Are you familiar with PLUR?
I was barely familiar with poi until, as far as I was concerned, it was literally that starchy shit that everybody hates in Hawaii.
Yeah, so PLUR is PLUR, and it represents peace, love, unity, and respect. So it sounds kind of cliche, but honestly, like I've seen it's 100 times worse. And I do say this actually realistically, it's probably maybe not 100 times, but 10 to 50 times worse of a shit show just going to Church Street on a random weekend in Orlando than it is going there, because yes, there's a lot of chemicals being consumed. Don't get me wrong, like people are doing a bunch of stuff and they're in their own little world. But what's going on is everyone there likes the music, and they're just, like I said, it's more huggy. There's a lot less, like I don't really see many people like grinding and that kind of like overtly sexual stuff. I mean, everyone's wearing very revealing clothing.
Oh, sure. I mean,
but it's more of a
guys included.
Yeah, no, everybody. So it's more of a group hug kind of atmosphere than
yeah, that's exactly what he's discussing.
PLUR,
yeah.
exactly.
So PLUR.
So yeah, it in terms of bouncers, there's no bouncers. There are actually a number of medical tents.
Okay.
So if people are having a bad time, they can go there, where they're dehydrated or they're having a bad trip or something like that.
Right.
But if anything, they're just people going around checking in on people.
Is it so? It's very like sort of self-governing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But they have a fair number of staff. I think they're volunteers. They might be paid, that are going around either being info people, where they have like an info sign you can check in and ask. Because honestly, probably the biggest practical issue you encounter, there's so many people. And how do you stay in touch with people? And what you'll find is service with that many people in a small area gets really shitty. So just trying to find people becomes an issue. So having meetup points, having strategies like, if you guys get lost, meet us under the rainbow or meet us at the lockers.
Which is all rainbow.
Yeah. No, but there's a big rainbow in the middle of the whole set. Okay. So it's very, honestly, I never saw one person puke.
Really?
Yeah. In my 2 years of going to EDC, last year there was one person really effed up on the first day at like 3 p.m.
That's like the fucking amateur.
And that was it. Everybody else, like I said, there are a lot of chemicals involved.
Sure.
But I do think the intent or the vibe and the energy is really positive and nice.
That's
you have
cool,
to like it though. If you don't like it, that's a totally different story. You'll be miserable. But if you're into that music, the music's phenomenal. The environment is incredible.
Oh yeah.
And then depending on how much of a dimensional shift you want to go down, there's that there too, because of the lights and all that. It's really cool.
Because somebody had told me, actually my old boss had told me, he's like, "Oh, Chris, next EDM in Orlando, like I'm taking you. You have to go." I'm like, "Bro, if one fucking person bumps into me, like I'm gonna fucking barbarian from Diablo 2 just berserker rage through there and just a tornado of fists, because I don't like getting bumped. Exactly. Like I don't deal with getting bumped into.
Well, I know people that are in a lot of people that say, well, I have claustrophobia, or I have anxiety in groups, and it would not be a good setting for me. And I get that.
Yeah, and that's right. So
you have to be comfortable with large.
I don't like being at
stuff.
Disney World like that. So let alone.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
for sure.
But
they're nicer things to look at here than it for the adults. I
mean, it's the production quality is incredible. I mean, like,
amazing! It's amazing.
Like I just that alone is awesome. It's like Disney World for adults. So welcome back. I'm glad you guys all survived and
yeah.
That's good. That's good. Excellent. So what's on your mind? You said you want to discuss lots from our chat.
Yeah. Basically,
what have you been thinking about?
Yeah. So what happened is, as usual, I text you something, you text back, and then all of a sudden, you ask a very thought-provoking question, and I go on a rant, and we say, "Oh, we should have saved that for the podcast."
Yeah,
so
it happens.
So I actually screenshotted it to remind us.
Okay, all right.
But it basically was, you said, I have a banger of a question, and is, how do you roll?
Interesting.
Okay.
I asked you that?
You asked me that. How do you roll? And it kind of stemmed from this notion of you've had experience in the past where you've rolled. In this case, you were talking about, in the past I've rolled with lower belts or even a white belt, and they're doing something in my guard, or they're doing something in a situation that seems like you're not able to connect the dots. You're like, I'm trying to figure out what they're doing, but I don't quite get it. So then you ask the person afterwards in these situations, like, "Hey, what were you trying to do there?" And most of the time you get a response of, "I don't know."
I don't know. That's yes.
Yeah, so. And that triggered me. I was just like, I went all caps in the whole thing. Because I have a real clear answer to that, and I feel pretty confident, like, saying it, even though I haven't been training that long.
You use that qualifier a lot.
I do.
So, like, just to give you a heads up, most people have quit by the time you've reached how long you've been training, right?
Fair enough.
So I mean, like, you've already. I hate that cliche of like, the blue belt is really a black belt in other martial. It's kind of true though, right? Like, you can go buy a black belt and fucking champion. I mean, like, I hate to. I'm not calling out other traditional martial arts, whatever the case is. I mean, but you can, kids can achieve black belts in that amount of time. You've been doing that in something that's alive and real and you put in twice as many hours as they have.
Well,
so
I just think it's respectful to those that have done it more than me, that I'm not coming out here.
But you're allowed to speak your opinion.
I know that.
You're
and my opinion, is probably going to change over the years and mature and stuff. But right now, the simplest answer to how do you roll. So there are two questions. How do I roll personally? And then what's an approach to rolling? Okay. So the first is for this situation with the person that says, I don't know. What do I do?
Whose fault is that?
Both the instructor and the student, okay, in my opinion. But the answer is simple. Do what you've practiced in class. So I know that's frustrating at first, but if you just learned a double underpass and that's the only guard pass do that for 5 minutes. And let the guy defend against it.
At least funnel yourself to get there,
Yeah, but you don't even have to. I mean, just dive for double unders. Like, just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And to your point, I've had experiences where I've rolled with relatively new people in a fundamentals class, and whenever possible, I try to make a habit of feeding them what we practice.
Yes.
And I would say less than half the time they'll actually
even recognize it
and do it.
Yes.
And I'm just sitting there like, and this can be something as basic as a triangle where I'm in closed guard and I literally plop down and I put my arm 45 out.
Degrees.
Yeah. I'm like feeding it there, and they don't raise their hips up and actually close a triangle. So that
is it. So is that you think that's muscle memory, or you think that people, when they spar, get into an immediate sort of fight or flight mode where they literally forget about training and just go to gut instinct because that training isn't instinct yet?
I think that's a good point. I think newer students probably do that. I think there's kind of they tense up. You feel the guys that are tense.
Oh yeah. I mean,
so I think those are the people that definitely lends itself to it. But I also think there's I think there's an arrogance that a lot of people have that comes to learning, and I think a lot of people are guilty of it. It's not just white belts. In many cases, guys like Paul talk about higher belts being more guilty of it in many places, where it's like the worst. One thinks they know it after they do 2 reps, like, it's show technique. I do 2 or 3 reps. Now let's tighten our belts and chit chat about this cool thing I saw on the weekend or something. It's like, do you actually know the technique? You know what I mean? So I think when a guy goes out into a live situation and they either can't execute it or they don't even recognize it to even try it, it's like that's on the student. Now I think instructors in general, I think teachers in general beyond just jiu-jitsu can do a better job of teaching students the art of learning. I think that's something we never talk about in any discipline.
Or just laying out clear expectations of what we're supposed to be doing given that exercise at the moment.
Yeah.
I think is very important.
Yeah. So it's kind of, it's weird for me because I think early on as a white belt, I think it can be frustrating to not know much and be funneled out of positions that you even know.
Yes.
So let's ignore the fact that people don't recognize the position they're in to try a technique that they know.
So here we go to the hierarchies again.
Yeah, well, without a hierarchy, it's a recognition of, okay, we did a closed guard sweep. You are in closed guard. Do the sweep. Grab the, if you want to do a scissor sweep, grab the grips you just studied and do it. Now, it's frustrating in a fundamentals class because what did everyone just practice? Scissor sweep. So if that's the only thing you know and you go to roll, what's the first thing that everyone's had practice defending a little bit? The scissor sweep.
Yes.
So your success rate is going to be a lot lower, and you're going to have a lot of false negatives, meaning you're doing the right thing, you're not being rewarded for it, not because of anything really wrong. It's because you just started practicing the move,
and they know what to expect.
And they know what to expect. And me and my buddy,
that makes you better.
It does, but me and my buddy Victor talk about it's like usually you start hitting things a month later because people have kind of forgotten about it.
Yes.
So let's say you're doing a De La Hiva section, and then next month you're doing butterfly. Well, guess what? Go back and start doing the De La Hiva stuff, and now people aren't keyed in on it because they're keying in on butterfly sweep defense.
And it's a more proper representation of what it is.
Yeah.
Like the true success rate.
But the way I approach rolling is depending on who I'm going with, obviously, and that's its own its own little art form, I would say. But as you get better and as I've progressed, jiu-jitsu gets more and more fun because there are more positions where I have opportunities to practice things I want to practice. So if I'm on someone's back, I'm practicing some Danaher system stuff. I'm usually trying to go for a reverse triangle, stuff like that. If I'm in headquarters position, headquarters is probably is like every week I might be doing something different. One week I was trying to do back step passes, and this is all De La Hiva passing, but I go to headquarters and I'm trying to do back steps. Then I was on a float passing binge and stuff. And none of these things I'm getting to any sort of proficiency, but when I'm rolling, there's a concerted effort to practice something in a position. And as I get better, there are more positions. My capacity to remember positions and things that I want to practice increases.
Sure.
So I'm not screwed so much by, I want to funnel into double underpass, but this person passes my guard right away and I can't do double unders, because I'm never in that position. So just do that. And then if you're struggling to funnel because you're getting completely dominated, identify the position you're in the most and then ask your coach, what do I do in this position? Because guess what? That's the position you're practicing the most. Whether you want to or not, that's the one you're practicing the most. So that's kind of my rant.
That's also interesting too, because I would take that a step further and say, this happens all the time when I roll with this person.
Yes.
That helps a lot, right? Because in general, the coach has eyes on everybody and they have because they've rolled with everybody, they have a good idea of what that person's strengths and weaknesses are too, and how you can, deal with that. So I would take that a step further and do that. But that's a big thing, right? So I think this stemmed from my question to you about how frustrated I was because as a higher belt, and nothing against other higher belts and whatever it is, but when I come to class and I want to train, I'm there to train, right? I'm there just like everybody else to go through the reps. I don't do the bullshit, and I told myself this when what was his name, Milton or Miles? It was an MI name when I was a white belt, and he was a purple belt, and he would show up every day late to class conveniently and skip the warm-up. We've all been running around in a circle for fucking 10 minutes because that's what they do, and then sit there and chit-chat with the instructor, blah blah blah, and all this stuff, and then come rolling time, just fucking smash all the white belts. Because not only because you're more technically proficient, because you also skip the warms. Either way, so higher belts, you're not above warming up and drilling and learning just like everybody else. You're also not above shutting the fuck up when the instructor is teaching something, and when it's time to actually working that, and not saying this is what I do instead, or this is how I like to do it. Teach the way it's taught. When it's time to drill, then do your little variation on it, right? That's annoying as fuck. Because it's almost the same as and I hate this too, because as an instructor sometimes this happens. The but what if question. I appreciate that, but that's just not, because there's a multitude of stuff that goes on in jiu-jitsu. What we're training at that moment is just what we're training at that moment. This is that person's reaction, right?
I think if more people had an attitude of trying to make what the instructor is teaching work, as opposed to constantly poking holes in it, it's probably gonna make for a better class.
And I don't think it's necessarily poking holes. I think it's a matter of trying to. I guess that is. It's sort of a backhanded way of poking holes in the way they.
I mean, I'm not saying that they're even in a situation where the instructor is inferior to you and is teaching something that you think is bullshit, at least try to understand where he or she's coming from.
Right.
And maybe you can
That
get something
situation
out
might
of
arise,
it.
right?
And maybe you can get something out of it. But yeah, I would. It's funny how people just kind of go around and just, they go through the motions. Caroline's here looking at us and. Oh,
It's fine. No, you can vacuum it. It's fine.
You can totally vacuum.
Yeah. It's the
No,
mic
these mics are
literally
good.
the professional quality podcast. Caroline, come on, give us some.
Haven't
credit
you
here.
listened to the Are you not a listener yet? You haven't subscribed?
Oh,
We're gonna shame her now into subscribing. Just now. But yeah, I think jiu-jitsu is kind of like, you know, you can learn something from everyone, even from the people you don't think know as much as other instructors. Just try to get where they're coming from, even if it doesn't work for you because you're not too, you know, some guy's 250 and 6'6" and he's teaching an escape, like Ryan Wilkerson. Love the guy to death. He showed me and Victor some escapes, and they made sense. But Victor and I were looking at each other like, Ryan, we're just not quite built like you. Like, we're not going to be able to shove people off.
Like our
you or
ratio of
Jeremiah.
white twitch to
you
red
know
twitch
what I mean?
muscle fibers is not the same, you know?
So it's one of those things. So.
No, but at least try, right? Like, and that's the thing is, like, I will still continue to try whatever it is, whether it's the most simple move, drill the hell out of it, just because that's what we're working that day. You know, when the time comes to drill it live, then do whatever. But that's what drives me nuts. And like you said, just to your point, when you're sparring, trying to work, like, one would think that maybe it's like that's what you're supposed to do, but I guess people just want to roll, and that's
okay. So how do you go about? Let's tackle the whole like attitude in rolling. So it's like we've done class, we've done our situational sparring.
Okay, fair.
5 minutes is on the clock. Start wherever you want. How do you go about picking your partner, or not even picking your partner, but
I don't think you ever should pick your partner, but
okay, it's more like how do you have a mindset? Like, tell me about your different mindsets rolling with different people, because I think we can agree that with different people, you're gonna have different roles, whether you want it or not. You have to roll differently. So what's your thing?
Oh my god. So one thing is like being on the same page, and I think a big part of like everything in life is just proper communication. You know, like what one would think
words
that's
to live by.
You're right.
Communication.
One would think that that's the case, but being on the same page about things. Some people, they don't communicate as well, or whatever the case is, or it's just, if you know somebody well enough, like you just said, like you have to approach things differently, right? Like with let's use Ryan Wilkerson for example. It's the fight of your life, right? So like I sort of have to approach that as like I need to make sure I'm bringing my A game, I'm defending properly, and whatever the case is, because the likelihood of us drilling whatever it is we're working that day is not really going to be the case, right? And just because I know most people's personalities well enough that I tend to adapt to whatever it is that they're going to do, because they're, and to no fault of their own, they're not being as mindful of a student, I guess. But like for like a lower belt or somebody I'm just vastly larger than, you know, like, because at the end of the day, training should be for both people to get better. Whether you're a higher belt rolling with a day one white belt or a purple belt rolling with a blue belt, you know, like everybody's at different levels, everybody's got different strengths and weaknesses. And you've been in enough of my classes at this point where, you know, before we spar, I literally do it every time. I know everybody gets tired of doing it or hearing it, but I make a conscious effort to tell everybody rolling in class is training. It's for all of us to get better. It's for all of us to get to help each other, right? It's not competing. Leave competition for competition. And I'm just not sure most people approach it that way. I guess one can argue if I'm that much better than another person that I should just smash the fuck out of them, and then the onus is on them to get better. But I would argue that, you know, like, if you're only playing to your strengths all the time, like, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? If you're just a guy who's just dominant on top and whatnot, and you refuse to either pull guard or, you know, or you're just not helping yourself, you know, because there will come a time where somebody will be equal or better at you than whatever it is that your strength is. So you need to be able to put yourself in bad position to work your way out of it just the same. So,
how intense do you roll?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you. You've rolled with me a handful of times.
Yeah.
How intense do I roll?
You're on the lower end compared to the other people I roll with.
Yes, very, very much so.
I don't know. I wouldn't put a number to it for you. I don't know how much, I think early on, I think you always have that curiosity of like, I wish I could see like a meter on everyone's head to see how hard they're going with me. It's like, how hard is this brown belt going with me right now? How hard is this blue belt going with me right now? Are they going at 60% of their capacity, 20% of their capacity, 80% of their, that sort of thing.
Well, okay, so
that's just sort of this
early on in our sort of like introductions to one another. What was the one giveaway that I was rolling seriously one time?
Well, I wouldn't even say seriously. You just did things that were atypical for you. You didn't go to guard. It was my Shark Tank or my Gauntlet. So Shark Tanks people are more familiar with. So when I was up for my blue belt, you were one of the guys that cycled in on me, and you immediately assumed top position and side control. And I was like, "Look at you, Chris!"
Yeah,
I even made the comment.
So,
I even made the comment while we're doing it. It's like, "Look at you, Chris, taking top control."
Yeah, like
and you're
so,
like the smeshing.
Yeah, so like and it's funny because like for the longest time, when I started jiu-jitsu, I was a larger guy. I was like 220, right? So I was used to playing on top. I was big, and so I only played top game. I refused to go to my back. And then somewhere along the way, I think it was probably mid blue belt, maybe higher level blue belt, I just realized that my bottom game wasn't the best. So I really concentrated on like working on my concentrated on working my bottom game, which honestly I just took a liking to. I think it lends itself better to my personality just because I'm lazy and passive.
You did a reverse Chris Howder.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, that's exactly it. I succumbed to the seductive nature of the guard. And ever since then, this is sort of what I've been doing. Just I think I found my calling and just being on my back, just kicking my legs around.
To the layman that doesn't train jiu-jitsu, that's going to sound really good.
But so that's I don't know, like that's how I roll. I mean, like it's always you can always escalate, right? But I won't. It's sort of.
Do you ever have days though where you're like, I want to go hard today?
I never pull harder, man. Like
No.
I can't say I ever do. I always approach most conflicts, and not that jiu-jitsu rolling every day is a conflict, but there's a Radiolab podcast who they talked about, like it was called The Good Show, and they talked about like sort of like moral, how you behave against other people and sort of like conflict resolution. And they talked about how they wanted to handle the Cuban Missile Crisis, I believe it was, at the time. And they took literally like all the best computer programmers in the world, and they're like, write us a program for what you think is best to avoid like world dominate, or to avoid just like blowing up the world, right? And the program that won was where the world didn't end up one country just obliterating the other, or both countries obliterating each other, was one called tit for tat. So you always start off like it was like you start off light and you kind of poke just to see what the reaction is, and then the moment the other side pokes back harder, then you retaliate hard, but then you go back to just poke again, right? So that's sort of like what I do when I grapple. Like I just sort of start off light, they retaliate, I retaliate back to either save myself from getting submitted or whatever. And then once I sort of like establish like a heavy top position where I could smash, I just go back to my sort of like poking again. And whether or not that's good for jiu-jitsu, I don't know, but that's just how I handle things.
That's interesting because it actually, it's funny because you made the reference that everyone's going to find out that I'm a closet wrestling fan, but
we found that out 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we found that with me and Chris back in the day when I was watching Stone Cold Steve Austin and all that. But
I remember stunning Steve Austin.
Stunning Steve Austin. The Hollywood Blondes, baby. So anyway, there's a concept in that. So obviously, that's there's choreographed. Those guys are working together, but there's physicality there. They want to make it they want to make it appear as if they are hitting each other. So there is impact. There is,
yeah.
And there's a concept.
Unless it's shoot style, right?
Shoot style, but there's in you know, they talk about working snug and this sort of thing. So you can't see through the work, so to speak.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like, you know, you need camera angles to hide that they're actually hitting each. Like they are hitting each other, you know, but they're hitting themselves hard in safe places. But there's a concept of a potato, and a potato it's when the guy gets excited or he hits you for real a little too hard.
Okay.
And in wrestling circles,
but without intention to, just
without intention,
or accident,
you know,
or just
you messed
being
up. Like
excited.
I misjudged distance and I hit you hard. You know, well, a lot of times that warrants what's called a receipt.
Okay.
Which is the other guy will hit you back to let you know,
right?
That
like
I felt that.
Then it becomes itchy and scratchy, right?
Yeah, kind of. But it doesn't.
It shouldn't result in itchy and scratchy.
It shouldn't result in escalation where now like the next person grabs. You know, like in your situation, it's like, oh, someone did something really aggressive. You know, maybe they did I don't know. Maybe they were really just gruff around your neck or something.
Yeah, like just a club. By accident,
Okay, then maybe you get them back, but then you don't suddenly keep escalating and say, okay, now it's on, sort of thing. Some people that happens, but I think that concept of it's not as though if a person messes up, you have permission to hit them back, but it's almost like
it's
letting
check,
them know. Right? Yeah, it's a check. Letting them know, like, wait a minute, you're not the only. I'm not the only one that can receive here. You can also, I can do stuff to you that you're not going to like. So it's sort of a reminder to, hey, you know your boundaries, protect my body, and I'll protect your body, and we can get better.
It's a trust, right? Like that's a big part of jiu-jitsu in general. Is like you're literally entrusting your
which
your
goes
health.
back to when you roll with certain people that are, let's say, more physical or wilder. How do you roll with them?
At that point, you sort of, well, first, I mean, I'm of the mindset of defense first. Like it's because without defense, you'd.
Okay, let me ask you a different question. How do you roll with a brand new person? So let's say, and not a brand new person in the sense of this is our, you know, like you're introducing someone to the mats. Let's say you're sitting on the mat, a athletic looking dude in a white belt that you don't know walks up and says, hey, let's roll. And you don't know the guy from Adam in class. You haven't seen him. How do you roll with him? So I have an experience, and
I will, as with 90% of the people I roll with, I will pull guard first, and just to give a little credit to SBG, you know, I had seen a seminar tape of a guy who said, you know, in general, when you roll with somebody brand new or somebody you just never met before, they could be a higher belt, you will have a generally good idea of their, not ability, but just sort of their intent if you get them in your closed guard. And I think sort of just because I love closed guard is it's so sensitive to things, and it's very controlling, and plus it's often the most commonly associated guard with jiu-jitsu. Well, people will have sort of like a recognition of that. In general, I will close guard, break their posture, generally scissor sweep because it's actually my highest percentage sweep. Scissor sweep them to mount and just give them a little taste of like just pressure, right?
Calm down. The old
exactly.
Down.
Just you know, like if they get a little bit too out of hand, a little shoulder pressure, not quite sternum pressure yet, but if they're just like chilling out and appear to be getting out without just thrashing wildly, because at that point I stay on them and like because to me that's what jiu-jitsu is about, right? Like immobilizing person, controlling them.
Do you think it's beneficial to choke the fuck out of them right away?
Absolutely.
So
not.
They know. So no.
To like, okay, sorry.
So they're kind of like, okay, me just thinking I can win and me just going balls to the walls as a schizo white belt is the right way. So do you think like getting choked the fuck out early on will mitigate that? Will calm them down?
Absolutely not. So it's sort of,
because I kind of think it will.
I think it'll, but here's the thing, right? Like, just the idea of not necessarily the mat enforcer, which is another unspoken rule of jiu-jitsu.
Oh yeah, I want to understand that better.
Okay, so like I always feel as though a big part of how conflict is handled on the mat, not just training, reflects quite a bit on the gym and what does that teach the student, right? Just like the idea of somebody fucking losing their shit and kind of losing their cool if they're a new belt, a new person or what have you. if your reaction to them, and mind you, I'm also like bringing in parenting to this at this point. If your reaction to them is to escalate, like, what does that teach them, right? So like now when they have the opportunity to do that to somebody, like all you're gonna do is they're gonna do the same to the next person.
But as long, okay, I guess the big thing I'm saying is if the person, so let's use a larger schizo white belt as an example.
I think what's more demoralizing to them, choking the fuck out of them, right? Because I don't think people quite understand. Kind of going back to what my friend was talking about, how he said like the Khabib McGregor fight was terrible. He's like, all he did was just choke him, right? I'm like, well, okay. He's like, that's so cheap. People tend to view a quick submission as cheap. Whereas I think it's more demoralizing to somebody to put on the VU look of apathy, mount the fuck out of them, let them thrash and just gas themselves out, and I look bored out of my fucking mind.
Okay, so I think that I like that image too. I think what's important to note here is it was provoked by something. So I'll use my example here.
Yeah, please. Here.
So my example is my second day of jiu-jitsu. I happened to appear at Randori, which happened a lot. We used to have a Randori class on Fridays, and for whatever reason, if it was the time, we don't have Randori on Fridays. In gi.
In gi, okay.
In gi. Yeah. So for whatever reason, a lot of people that just started around the time I did would just randomly show up to this class thinking it was just another class, and I'm a no stripe white belt. So
I can't believe you were even allowed in that class.
Yeah, but I mean, on those days you'd have maybe 4 to 6 people.
Okay,
so
it's like, just hop in.
Yeah. That's a separate topic, whether they should train or not. Anyway, so my second day, and I go up to JB, who doesn't know me from Adam at this point.
And you, who certainly don't know him.
Yeah, I don't know him. So we roll, and he was playing butterfly. Now, even though my recognition of things back then was 0, when I look back, he was playing butterfly guard. Okay. And I just kind of like blitzed into him because I was a bit of a, fully admit I was probably a schizo at the beginning there. I'd say I was a schizo for a week and a half. Then I learned,
which is very good.
Then I learned very quickly. Going hard and just using my strength and athleticism is not going to go anywhere. Like, I need to accept the fact that I'm inferior.
I'm curious as to what your sort of singularity was. What made you realize that?
Repeated failure of doing it that way.
Interesting.
And just accepting that I'm going to be at the bottom of the totem pole. And the quickest way for me to get better is to actually practice the techniques and try it. So
what an idea.
I went with JB, and I don't think I was by any means like the worst offender when it comes to being a schizo, but I was being a schizo with him. And he very quickly, and pretty calmly actually, butterfly swept me into mount. And then he just did his high mount kind of control. Mm-hmm. And I was probably thrashing a lot and stuff. And then with about 10 seconds left in the round,
sunset flip him out.
No. With about 10 seconds. And by the way, JB's like outweighs me and outsizes me by, he's probably 6'4". Yeah, much bigger, stronger guy than me and taller.
And talented.
Yeah. Anyway, and with about 10 seconds left, I don't know what I was fighting, but then I just remember feeling like my ear was being ripped off. Oh my God. Essentially what he did was he did some sort of lapel choke. I don't even know what it was at the time.
Right.
But it hurt, and I thought my ear got ripped off when he did it because he ripped the lapel across my ear to get to a choke position, something like that. And then he, JB did his kind of deadpan like shake and, didn't acknowledge me much after that.
Were you like, that guy's a fucking superhero? Or were you like, I'm going to do that or like, how did you feel after that as a brand new student, basically?
As a brand new student, I was just like, okay,
I'm not sure most would react that way.
Yeah, but I think the thing is I did learn that being wild was going to get that reaction. So it's almost like it's like conditioning. It's like that was negative reinforcement, but it did serve the purpose. He didn't pat me on the back and say, "Don't don't thrash. He gave me negative reinforcement, which he made me suffer a little bit. You know what I mean?
I'm not sure most people would recognize that, though, right? I mean, like, going back to the whole communication thing.
But the key here's the detail.
Yeah.
I initiated it first. He didn't just blitz me. It's not like we didn't like slap, bump, and then he double legged me through the roof, through the ground, or Soto guard me through the ground. I've seen him do that with big guys like Clint, where Clint tried to do something crazy, and then you Soto guard him through the mat. And that's how. Again, it depends on how people learn, but I recognize that maybe I can go about this a little differently.
I would say that you are in an exception to the rule, yes, because you're a little bit more mindful of your training. That's why these discussions even started, right? Where most people, I think, require, just going back to like sort of independent learning, I'm not sure how many people are out there wanting to get better versus just showing up to class, doing the technique, and thinking that's automatically making them better versus the experimentation, learning the more of the ins and outs and of the whys of whatever it is that works. I think most people just want to learn the how, not the why. And that applies to as meta as you can get.
Well, I mean, another example of something like this occurring was months later. I think I was a 4-stripe white belt or something, and I had kind of discovered the loop choke, and the loop choke from the front.
Okay.
Where you have kind of like a loose a loose cross choke, cross grip on the lapel, and you try to get kind of that. I think it's like a Henzo Gracie,
like snap down.
Yeah, kind of the Henzo thing where you try and get their head into your in your pocket, and then
Did Jim teach you that, by the chance?
No, I don't know where I saw that. It was one of those things where I just saw it look cool, and I was like, oh, this seems to work. Or it seemed promising. So I tried doing that, and I went with Ryan Wilkerson. I tried to do it to him, and I got him, but I didn't get him in the sense I didn't choke him.
Right.
I kind of got him into that position, and I was really cranking instead of choking, and I might have even had the lapel across his face. Like I could definitely feel I wasn't. You
paid for that, didn't you?
I could feel I wasn't under the chin, but I wasn't as mindful as I am now about that. So I was doing it,
right.
And he got out, and he was visibly pissed. Maybe he wasn't pissed, but I would say he was visibly pissed. And he proceeded to hulk up and mount me and really, really try to choke the fuck out of me with an Ezekiel.
He does that anyway.
Yeah. No, I know that, but I mean, I know the difference in intent. You know what I mean?
No, yeah.
And I fought it, and I was a little more skilled at times, so it wasn't immediate, but within, I would say, 5 to 10 seconds, like he muscled that in, and he choked hard, and I tapped, and he released, and he didn't. I don't think he held it or anything. And when we released, he kind of had this dead stare. Like he wasn't just normal. He had this dead stare looking at me, and I was.
We love you, Ryan. By the way.
No, I love Ryan,
yeah.
And I'll tell the aftermath to it too. And we slapped, bump, we went back to work, and he was more relaxed at that point, and I was also kind of like, I don't want to poke the bear anymore. You know what I mean?
Well, okay. So as a student, though, yeah.
I don't want to poke the bear anymore. So let me try and flow a little bit more. So anyway, that happened. Then after class, I was like, hey man, I hope we're good and stuff. Oh yeah, man, we're fine. And that was it. That was the end of it. And I think Ryan is good at compartmentalizing kind of things.
Yes,
you know what I mean? And I think he had known me well enough where he had more his initial impression of me. He had already had an initial impression of me because he's seen me train. I've trained with him before. This wasn't the first time we rolled, sort of thing. So what I learned from that was, don't. It raised my awareness of my partner, my training partner, so I don't abuse their body when I'm practicing something. So yes. I'm more mindful of cranks. I'm more mindful of, if I'm doing something, if I'm choking and I'm not getting anything and I feel iffy, I'll let go after a couple seconds.
Because that means
with him I was still forcing it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So that's what ended up happening.
Thank you, Mark Peace. He is contributing to Dad Bod with homemade biscuits.
Oh, so. the infamous biscuits. All right.
This, I'll be It's my glycogen replenishment after training. So, but and I wish more people would approach things that way.
So the last thing I want to say, and then you can you have it, is I do think that JB and Ryan are mat enforcers to a degree. I would consider them mat, even though I don't even know entirely what a mat enforcer is. I just know that those guys, not only are they good, but I actually have seen an example of JB really being what I would consider a mat enforcer, where he saw a schizo white belt kind of maul a smaller person. And then he was like, come with me. And then he proceeded to bow and arrow him like 5 different ways. And not even like bowing. And to the guy's credit, he was tough and kind of just like sat in it for a while, but, JB kind of did that. And I think, again, this might kind of like go into the territory of, jiu-jitsu used to be taught this way, where the tough people kind of survived, and maybe I would be okay in that environment because I reacted a certain way. I didn't react negatively when these guys were very physical with me.
Right.
I didn't like go home and say I don't want to train anymore. I understood it and I was cool with it. And maybe it's not the best way to teach, but I got the message there, and I don't know. I mean, it's jiu-jitsu. There's some physicality involved, if you can't defend yourself, like, and that's what it is. Like, I have conflicts when I go with people, because I don't have conflicts, but I'm conflicted when I go with somebody new, because if I go with a big new white belt that's athletic, if I put them in my closed guard, I'm not skilled enough in closed guard, and I have a size disadvantage where a lot of times they're just going to stack me and put me in an uncomfortable position. I'm not going to get submitted, but my upper back is getting contorted, my neck is getting squished on, and I'm like, is this the best way? Should I just establish dominance from the get-go? Should I try to, at least? Should I try to assume top position and just ride them out and let them know this is where you are in the pecking order? Don't fuck with me. Now let's train.
I think
don't try to beat me. You know what I mean? Let's just roll.
So don't try to beat me is a big. I think that's. I don't think white belts, let alone, or excuse me, like upper belts, even really understand that, right? I'm big on culture, right? And in general, culture should trickle down from the higher belts. They should be an example for other students. And if somebody is overly cranking on things and that sort of thing, like if it's warranted, okay, but just as oftentimes you have to snatch your kid's hand away or smack them from doing something, right? It's always the discussion afterwards that sort of matters more. And I don't want to sound too like millennial parent here, but it's necessary, and I think it contributes to the overall learning environment and the culture of the gym, if such, right? So I'm I always like to calm down, mount the dude and just wet blanket him, dude. Just calm the fuck down, will you? That's my personality too. I'm a sort of anti-conflict type of person. I will, however, if I have to, knee on belly, wait for them to almost tap and let go. And do that, that's. I mean, but I think you have. Yeah, I think it takes for me to get to that point. It takes enforcement at that point. Seeing an injustice on the mat is what forces me to do that.
So I think that what's interesting about jiu-jitsu, what I think is beautiful about jiu-jitsu, is it checks egos. I think we all have egos, especially. Without going too much into societal things, I think I much prefer dealing with people that have bigger egos than smaller egos. I'd much rather deal with people that are slightly overconfident than people that are underconfident. I think that's...
Elaborate.
I think it's healthier to be to be full of yourself instead of someone that's constantly saying, oh, I'm not good enough.
Okay, fair enough.
I think, me personally, I'd much rather deal with people that are more confident than people that don't have confidence in themselves. That's just a personal thing. But the great thing about jiu-jitsu is you can have whatever ego from past accomplishments, what people have told you. As you like to say, the mats never lie. So when you roll,
Yeah, I mean,
you know exactly where you lie in the ecosystem, you know? And I think that's where, to whatever degree, you know, the most extreme would be like some meathead from the gym who's like, bro, I'm an athlete, I would have been playing football if I didn't have a shoulder injury, blah, blah, blah. And they come in and they want to hulk through everything and they get beat up. And beat up is not they get beat up, but
their ego gets beat up.
Their ego gets beat up. They get mounted, they get armbarred, they get all that. Just like those viral videos that pop up. It's like 220-pound bodybuilder goes with,
takes
5'3". It takes on 5'3" blue belt, and look at the blue belt tap pound, that kind of thing. So I think that's what's good about it. But for whatever reason, right now, I think part of that is an establishment of a pecking order, not in a sort of like A beats B, like you have literally a ranking,
right.
But this sort of thing, like you've just started. A realistic expectation for someone who just started is you're going to lose to most of the people here. But there's some variance. There's some variance based on athleticism and endurance, but that really doesn't have too much impact for someone who's just starting. And I think that's where this whole mat enforcer thing and checking egos is
it's necessary.
It's a necessary. I'd even go as far as say it's a necessary evil. You
will say, or you won't say?
I would. I'll go as far as
I will say it's a necessary evil. I don't agree. But
what's your thing with what's your idea of a mat enforcer?
A mat enforcer to me is somebody who has the skills, ability, and personality to be able to turn it on when an injustice is has occurred on the mat, right? Like, for example, somebody like Amanda, she's a blue belt, and yes, she's been training for at least a year now, right?
She's been training a week longer than me.
Okay, so 2 years?
Just under 2 years. So yeah, actually, it would be coming up on 2 years. Yeah,
coming up on 2 years. The fact is, you have that 220-pound bodybuilder or whoever comes in. Whether or not he's trained or not, if he hulks out on her and she's not on it yet, which first off, that's a improper pair up with the instructor, but that's another argument altogether, or conversation altogether. And he fucking power bombs her right off the bat or something and fucks her neck up. Then you sick a Ryan Wilkerson on this guy, right? Because an injustice has occurred on the mat because somebody trained and hurt their training partner. And that shouldn't be happening on the mat. And I know you can't always take the responsibility away from the person who got hurt and whatever.
I mean, I agree with you. The big thing is that pair up shouldn't have happened.
Agreed. And that's another. So I'm just trying to use an example.
Yeah.
Right? Or somebody who, and this is what bugs me, right? Somebody who's a considerably higher belt, like a purple or above, rolling with a white belt, and all they do is just smash the fuck out of them. They're like let's say a second month white belt or something. And they smash the fuck out of them, or they do something they shouldn't have, or do some sort of fucking goofy submission, which I understand. Like sometimes you have to sort of test your submissions.
What's the difference between a mat enforcer and a mat bully?
Oh, because
it sounds like you're describing almost a mat bully sometimes.
A mat enforcer, though, is somebody who would be unassuming off the bat, and
so Ryan Wilkerson and JB are unassuming people.
I'm not going to say unassuming, but they're not like assholes. Right?
Oh, of course not. Yeah.
No. I mean, but a mat bully is somebody who constantly feels the need to push their weight around. Either, I just said consciously, but either subconsciously or not. Like they just do it. It's a part of their personality, and they sort of like get off on like either harming other people, submitting other people. Being rough, because you've heard me use the term before. There's a difference between rolling hard and rolling rough, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're rolling both hard and rough all the time for the sake of just roll, because that's what's giving you the edge on the mat, I think you need to take a look at your technique a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the big
and who you're rolling with too is a big.
Yeah,
thing,
I think
right?
it also depends on. I mean, it's really subjective to a degree, but it's like the mat bully is using their superior skill on people that did nothing wrong, so to speak, when it comes to mat etiquette. Whereas the mat enforcer is doing the exact same thing to people that violated mat etiquette.
Right. So going to mat etiquette here, that's a touchy subject, right?
I'm still learning mat etiquette.
And I think mat etiquette is more something that'll never be clarified, right? Because it depends on what gym you go to, which sort of like I think we're a little bit more of a progressive school when it comes to certain things. Like the idea of like, what are your thoughts on a lower belt asking a higher belt to roll?
I understand it's something that exists. It's something I'm aware of. It's something I will assume in a newer in an unknown academy until told otherwise, because it's their place and their house rules, and I'll respect that.
Yeah, as you should, right?
I think there's nothing wrong with it, except if there's delusion involved. And I think the delusion is if let's say the higher belt is wanting to do, so let's say the higher belt is training for a competition, and a 2-stripe white belt, is like, hey man, I want to roll, and that guy is getting ready and has other people that he could roll with. You know what I mean? It's sort of like,
and that's an extreme too, right?
It's an extreme, but it's like, what is? I think a lot of it comes back to, we kind of kicked off with like, how do you roll? Well, the other aspect that we didn't touch on so much is, how do you feel that day? Like most days, I feel like I want to train. Okay, and this is a side topic that we won't have time to talk about, but in the latest Matt Burn podcast, Josh refers to how do you define rolling? How do you define training?
Ooh,
how do you do it? For him, training
definitions are a big word.
And I didn't think, it was an interesting conversation. I think at the end of the day, what matters is we're able to communicate. We understand each other. Whether you use the word train and I use the word roll, or vice versa,
or spar,
right, yeah. and that all came up. But so that,
is jiu-jitsu a fight though?
Well, that was the thing he asked.
Oh, is it really?
That was the first thing. Is it a fight? And,
okay, I'm catching up to you.
And he said no, it's not. He doesn't think it's a fight.
Then why do they use the word fight all the time?
It's a match.
It's a match.
You have a jiu-jitsu match.
I agree.
But point being, I think common sense, to me, it's common sense that number one, there's how I'm feeling, and then there are people in the gym, like my training partners.
Yes.
I know all my training partners, the regulars, I know them all, and I know what they bring to the table. And I'll throw Chihuahua in here because even though he's not here anymore, we miss you, Chihuahua, but I think he's a good example of an extreme that exists, where it's like, if I'm paired up with Chihuahua, I know what I'm getting from him.
Yes.
So regardless of what my mood is, or Ryan Wilkerson. And
that's what I'm saying.
I'm going to go with Ryan Wilkerson. Regardless of my mood, I know
yeah, exactly.
I have to match that intensity.
Right.
So that comes to where if I have some say in my partner selection, then I'm going to influence my partner selection to go along with people that are going to be
conducive to your.
They're going to be consistent to what my mindset, what I want to do. It could be something as feeling like I'm tired or I'm recovering from an injury. Like right now, I have, I'm almost done recovering from bruised ribs, but I still feel them. So
thanks, Jamie.
Yeah. So I'm kind of thinking, I'm tending to go, or especially early on, people that are my size or smaller, because I didn't want to have to bear more weight, on my frame. And then you go with people that go a certain way. I'm going to avoid people that are probably top heavy guys.
Yeah.
For the most part, I'm rolling with everybody now again, which is great, and I'm happy about that. But depending on what my mood is, there's certain days where I want to just go hard. And then I'll pick the guys that I know are up-tempo guys. I'll go with a guy like Mike Sahibi, an up-tempo guy, and I'll get
Troy,
rolling. So, I think conflicts happen when there are not enough people in the training room and there are not enough people matching where you are mentally for that day.
And I think and so that the onus is on both people. And I think that's what people lack a lot I guess it's empathy, right? Like, is trying to be aware of where you are and where the other person is.
And also that regardless of who you're going with and whatever the skill level disparity is, up or down, there are always opportunities to practice and improve.
Exactly.
And that goes back to where we said, coming full circle, where I firmly believe in the concept of down training. Everyone agrees, if I go with a higher belt, it's good. Everyone loves rolling with Paul. Find someone that doesn't like rolling with Paul.
Right.
Everyone loves rolling with Paul.
Because he's doing his effort to make you better. Yeah.
Paul's not even smashing you, but I would even say if I went with JB going hard or Ryan Wilkerson, I enjoy going with Ryan Wilkerson. it's debatable to some degree if the disparity is so much. We've talked about this. Do you learn anything as a lower belt if you're in bottom side the entire time? And is it beneficial for the upper guy to be on top? I will let's shelve that for the sake of this conversation. But I do agree that that's an issue with this. But for the most part, everyone likes rolling with someone a little better than them.
Sure.
Right? Oh, I want to roll, I'm a blue belt. I want to roll with purple belts. I want to see how I do with purple belts. This is fun. I want to roll with brown belts. But I think I think down training is equally important and equally valid. Down training for me is by definition is training with someone of lesser skill. I can still practice stuff. And many times I can practice stuff that I don't have an opportunity to practice with other guys. But the bottom line is, don't hinge your success and development in jiu-jitsu on, I'm rolling with tough guys. I'm rolling with, I'm rolling with all these higher belts and going hard, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what?
So does the attrition, do you think though, because I think you had kind of mentioned it a couple weeks ago, jiu-jitsu is extremely young as a sport.
Yes.
And as such, it's extremely young in terms of the sort of pragmatically best ways of coaching and that sort of thing, and lending, a certain amount of it used to be just, from my understanding, it used to be just Pohada all the time, and that's how you get better, to train with lions and all these fucking memes, right? And sort of in essence, the cream sort of rises to the top, which is fair to a certain degree, but I think that's a lot of survivor bias.
I think there's a time and place for it, but I believe right now, I'm a big believer that the best way to improve quickly is consistency and putting as many hours on the mat as you can in a week. And the way you do that is you have to temper your intensity. You can't redline every day.
Right, because you only have so much energy, right? Recoverability.
And your body can only handle so much.
And so, but to your point, if you're training with the hardest, the toughest, most skilled people all the time, let's say there's an unlimited number of resources, unlimited number of times, or the infinite amount of time for that matter, you will get better, right? You can't not get better.
Correct.
Will you get better quicker?
What's the slope of that line?
Right. I think the point of diminishing marginal returns is it starts off very early, right? Versus training with people either similar or only slightly better, right? Because that's how you're...
So I think at a very high level, I think learning is an S curve.
Okay.
So the initial advancement is slow, and that's what I would
At a very high level, you're saying?
No. At the beginning and the end, an S curve. So at the beginning, the slope of that line is almost parallel to the horizontal axis.
Right.
Because I would call that the learning curve of something. You're confronted with a bunch of new stuff, and it's a little overwhelming at first. Then you hit a point of inflection, where now suddenly improvement happens a lot more rapidly. Then as you advance to the later stages of your development in that skill, things taper off again, and improvement takes longer and longer.
Diminishing returns, right?
Correct. So I think that, at the beginning, you are going to be kind of overwhelmed, but then over time, if you stick to trying to do what you know, practice, even if it's a very limited skill set, you'll more quickly reach the point where now you can practice more for more positions. You're not in shitty positions as much, and jiu-jitsu becomes fun. I can tell you from personal experience, the last 6 months of my jiu-jitsu has gotten way more fun because I'm in positions where I get to do more. I'm not on bottom so much.
Sure.
I'm actually able to practice other positions, and that in and of itself is fun. And especially when you get to do offensive stuff, that's fun too.
But that's also because, I think it was it Dana Innocenta who said, you should always train, and this is it makes perfect sense, but it's also just duh. You should always train with people of lesser skill, people of equal skill, and people of better skill.
Okay, so what's your percentage? Because Paul asked us that, and then he refuses to tell us what his percentage is.
Oh, so he's saying it's a ratio.
So it's if you had 100%, how many percentage of the rolls should be with higher, with equal, with lower?
I always feel it should be sort of just like a bell curve, right? 33 or 66% equal, and then 33% higher.
So I think,
and then 15% higher, 15% lower.
This might even vary depending on where you are in terms of your skill development. This might be a different answer for a white belt, a blue belt, a pro belt. For me, where I am, I think...
You don't think it's a sliding scale that just regardless of where you are, it's always going to be that, though? Like...
Well, I'm getting thrown so many techniques. Everything's new to me, right?
Okay.
So I actually think I should be rolling more with people a little weaker than me, so I have the ability to practice my techniques and not get shut down all the time. So I would actually say...
Yes, agreed.
I'm going to say 50% less. I would say 30 to 35% equal, and then 15%
people look better
superior.
than you.
Yeah,
yeah, which I think is fair.
But I enjoy rolling with people that are. I mean, I
right, like because that's how you sort of like calibrate, right? Like
but in terms of development, I think that's where it should be.
So 50% equal
within
the
lower.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you would have just dominated everybody all the time.
But it's not dominant. I mean, there's a difference between if I'm going with a brand new white belt, then that's different.
Okay.
I'm in a fundamentals class. I'm there to help them.
Yes.
And practice what I can. I'm polishing.
You're being a good student.
No, I'm polishing.
Whatever there's to work on, right? Because there's always stuff to clean up.
Yeah.
So like.
But there I'm funneling. I'm funneling to whatever.
Yeah.
You know. Here's your omoplata, and they're like.
So what is
they go back to close.
Whoever it was. Or they fall back and say, I don't know why I fell back. So I think like when you're training with lesser people, you should be training two things, I feel. Your attacks to see if they work, right? Because that's sort of like a good gauge of like your jiu-jitsu, right? And I would put myself in bad positions against lesser people, just because like the likelihood of them getting me in a bad position is much lower, right? So I'll put myself there and just kind of work on my defense. But when I want to attack, I'll want to attack. That's when I kind of want to attack the basics to make sure they're sharp. Because like that's it's to me it's like you're sort of a douchebag if you're doing like fucking worm guard stuff and like these crazy ass lapel things to somebody who's like a white belt, because like the likelihood of them defending that is none, right? Like they've not recognized they don't even know that they're in closed guard or whatever the case is.
Oh yeah, right.
So like you like what good are you, like, oh I did this fucking 17-step thing against this poor white belt, like are you better because of that? And then obviously you play your strengths and you play whatever it is you're working on with people who are of equal skill level, because that's when you really test yourself, right? Because that's a group of your peers. And then almost always when you're working with somebody of higher skill level, you try to attack, but they're shutting you down and that sort of thing. So it's mostly defense when you're playing against a person who's of significantly higher skill level.
But I think the people that are
but
better
you should still try.
The people that are better than you are probably some of your best measures of your development, because their improvement is slower. So they, in terms of points of reference, are a little more static.
I think it depends on their mood that day too, because like it depends on
but my underlying concept, I think, because improvement takes longer at higher belts. That they're not moving. Not as a point of reference. They're not moving as fast.
Right.
So if I compare myself to Victor, who's training as much, if not more than I am, it's hard for me to get any sort of reference because we're both doing our thing and we're probably both improving.
Getting better at the same rate. Yeah.
So I'm not going anywhere with him. So am I progressing? I guess if I was logical about it, if we weren't stalemating each other, let's say, then one of us would be improving faster, the other one would not be improving faster. But the fact that we're just kind of doing the same thing, we're probably still improving. But if I go with someone that's higher than me, like if I go with Ryan Wilkerson, that feels like I can gauge. No, I love
that's
Ryan.
That's how much we have respect for Ryan.
Exactly. It's like Ryan is a good benchmark. And the thing I love about Ryan, and this goes back to what we talked about a couple episodes ago, is he does not discriminate. I get Ryan Wilkerson, I get his role every time. Like I don't have to question, is he going hard with me?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he works with me. Don't get me wrong. I know that he works with me.
But he's going.
But there's an intensity there, and I really appreciate that because it's a great measuring stick for how I'm progressing.
Right.
Because I get to experiment with different things and try different stuff.
And I think that's just to your point. Like now that I am reaching the upper levels of beltdom, whether I like it or not. I always question myself every day of whether or not I'm actually improving and that sort of thing. And I'd read somewhere like it's not that you're getting worse. It's that everybody else is getting better, and you may have not topped off, but I've reached that point in diminishing marginal returns, right? And then it's not that I'm like I just suck more every day. It's just the people who should be getting better are getting better, right? Like the white belts, the blue belts, the purple belts, right? So they're catching up.
I'll remember this and talk to you whenever I'm a brown belt and be like, how do I feel? I mean, I think you're where you are in your jiu-jitsu journey is just different, and
Sure.
you're polishing things, and it's just a different,
it's
a different thing. But like we said, if people, as you get better, things improvement gets slower. That means the people behind are going to close the gap naturally because it's quicker
more
for them.
Visible, right? Like it's just like evolution. Like
so, what are your goals today for class?
My goals today for class are, because leg locks are such a new thing to me. I mean, like I've spent at this point 14, 15 years not really training leg locks. I'm trying to approach it as much as I can with white belt mindset, as I have been this entire time. And I'd really like to. It's funny because JB had mentioned a while back. I had said something about 50-50, and he's like, "Oh, I just stand up." I was like, "Well, that's great. Like you're JB and you're awesome at everything." So I think I might need a little bit more technical instruction with that. At this point, we've learned like 5 or 6 escapes from 50-50, or not escapes, but progressions for 50-50 in a couple of different sequences based upon what our partner is giving us. I'm going to work the ones that work to mount, because that's where I like to go, because I always work at the hierarchy of things, and I don't really I don't feel comfortable doing the one where you just sort of like shuck the leg out and like spin out of it, just because I don't want to run the risk of pulling a Jamie and twisting my own knee out. Because I'm not confident in my leg lock escapes yet. So that's sort of, I think it's sequence number 4, I think it is, to work to dope mount. So that's, I've taken a liking to that one a lot. Yours. And also working half guard stuff that we've been playing with in the morning that we haven't been doing at night.
Oh, okay. So my goals are simple. It's like I'm loving the 50-50 stuff, because that was actually a position that I had no ideas of what to do, and I had been asking Paul. I even asked him, and he showed me a couple moves real quickly months ago, but it didn't really stick in my mind. Mm-hmm. Not that I was ending up in 50-50 much in my roles, but it was certainly something where if you asked me, I really had nowhere to start in terms of how to get out of that position. So it's really really filled a gap in my head. But the really cool thing is it's connected the dots between that and a berimbolo, because we're actually doing a position where one of our escapes, if we call it escape, gets you to a position that you actually end up in if you do a berimbolo, because you actually get your hips under the person and you can go to a truck from there. So what's cool is I just added another.
That's the latest one
in my internal concept map. I have a new. I have 50-50 now in my mind, and I actually have arrows that I can draw out of it to go to other positions. And what's cool is it's associated with more positions. So it's really something that was definitely lacking, and it was something that I knew I lacked, as opposed to the stuff that I don't know that I don't know. Like the stuff you know that you don't know versus the stuff you don't know that you don't know. This was in the realm of, I knew that I didn't know much about 50-50, and I wanted to close the gap, especially when I hear guys like Faraz Sahabi saying, "Oh, I love 50-50. It's a great. I use that to sweep all the time."
Yeah, or Ryan Hall saying it's the best self-defense position, which I'm like, you're out of your mind, you know?
Yeah. So it's really cool with the gi. It's different because your ankle's a little safer with you have grips that you don't have in no gi.
Yeah.
So I think it's a lot of fun, and just going to practice that. I've had 3 days off, so my body feels fresh. Try not to go too hard and get hurt.
It just occurred to me, you can twister off of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally the twister.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You just get the truck and you're good to go.
Yeah.
So, good stuff.
Once you said truck, I was like, oh my God, yeah, that literally is
So, it's time to stretch. It's time to get ready.
Planet.
And are you going to say it this time, or am I going to say it?
Oh God.
Oh.
God. I will never say that, even though I did last week.
You said it last week?
Yeah.